All right, guys, Ginny and Georgia is back for season 3, and it's better than ever, in my opinion. So, today we are going to do a quick, spoiler free initial review, what I liked, what I didn't like about the show, and then the bulk of this video is going to be me going through every notable thing that happens in each episode, episode 1 through 10. We're going to get into the nitty gritty character details, character analysis, but initially, just some opening thoughts. So, I only watched this show because I needed something to talk about for this channel. Normally, covering Netflix releases does well, so I end up watching a lot of shows that maybe I initially wasn't interested in, and I had heard nothing but bad things going into Ginny and Georgia, but I was like, okay, it's a notable show, let me check it out. And I've done 2 videos on season 1 and 2, and I was so pleasantly surprised with what I got. Even season 1, the one that everyone rags on, I think was really well done in my opinion. I think it's very clear in that first season that the teenage stuff is meant to be a cringy teenage show. Like, I don't think as adults you're meant to find all the teenage stuff cool and like slay. You are meant to be seen there being like, oh, they're just cringy young kids. But the adult drama was really well done. I think the way that the adult drama with Georgia kind of intersected with the teenage drama was really interesting. Season 2 was genuinely like fantastic television. I was hooked. I was sat, I was enjoying literally every character exchange, all the dramatic twists and turns, minus one thing which we will talk about in this season 3 analysis because it's a big thing that is focused on. But yeah, I really like the show. I was so pleasantly surprised. And in fact, I haven't seen a Netflix show that has so much clear effort and resources put into it. I think the show looks really good. It doesn't have that annoying Netflix blur around the edges. It's all really well shot. It looks good. It almost looks like a TV show. And I think the performances from both Ginny and Georgia are genuinely next level. There is not a weak actor or actress in the cast. Even all the members of Mang are like really good performances, particularly Maxine and Abby. I think Joe's a great addition to the cast. I think Marcus is really good, particularly his portrayal and the exploration they do of depression. And I might be in the minority here, but I think the way the show addresses social issues is a lot better than a lot of other shows. All right. Like, I will take the way this show explores depression, mental illness, feeling lonely, like genuinely like domestically violent situations. I think it handles it with so much more grace and nuance and like actual stuff you can sit with and analyze compared to something like, I don't know, Degrassi or 13 Reasons Why, or a lot of other Netflix shows where you feel like you're watching like an after school special. Even like something like Sex Education, I think started talking to the audience a little too explicitly. Whereas in this show, it'll deal with heavy subject matter around consent and abortion and sexual rights and kind of like even exploring being a minority, being biracial. And I think it does it in a way where as an audience member, you have to actually sit there and unpack what you're seeing, in my opinion, in a pretty solid way. And this is exemplified with that whole teacher subplot that is run through all 3 seasons between Ginny and her English teacher, who clearly has it out for her due to some racial bias. And it's really well explored. And it's actually something that is worth pulling apart and picking apart. Anyways, the reason I say all of this is I was really high off this show going into season 3. And because of that, I was a bit nervous. I was like, what if they fuck this up? What if they don't hold the momentum? But no, this season full on, it goes full tilt. All right. This season is dealing with the direct fallout of the end of season 2. Georgia is on trial for murder and her past is explored. There are things that come out here that are very damaging to Georgia, and it shakes the whole town. I think what's really always been great about this show is the way it's not only focused on Ginny and Georgia, but it also focuses on their direct circles, and you see the impact they have on the people around them. And I think this season is really, really interested in that. It's really exciting to watch essentially this person that we've seen being so in control, essentially out of control. Like, everything that's going on is out of her control, and she's desperately trying to get that control back. I think the way Ginny and Austin are explored is really, really good. Now, let's just talk about a few notes I have this season, because I don't have many. I'm essentially going to glaze it for the rest of this review. So there are a couple of things. First off, we knew it was coming, all right? This show seemingly takes place over at max like a year or 2. I don't even know if they've changed classes. I think Austin has the same teacher throughout. Austin has clearly aged, all right? We need to address the elephant in the room. Here's the meme. It's rough, all right? And you need to deal with that. On top of that, they are at a point in the flashbacks, because this show has always had flashbacks to young Georgia when the kids were younger as well. It's at the point in the flashbacks where it's actually alarmingly close to the timeline we saw at the start of the show. So as a result, they've recasted the kids in the flashbacks, and they don't look anything like Austin and Ginny, and it's incredibly distracting. It's also this awkward thing of, well, we've seen what they kind of look like at that age. It's a bit clunky. On top of that, I do actually think if I had one note aside from that stuff that you just kind of have to deal with because it's a show, you know, the actors age, even though the characters don't, you have to kind of deal with it. But the one thing I will say is actually a critique I have of this season is I think there's too many flashbacks. That might be a hot take, but I think throughout the first two seasons, we've got a very clear portrait of young Georgia. It's not that I hate the flashbacks in their entirety. I just think this season was really laying it on thick. You'd be enjoying a scene in the present, and then you'll hear that dreaded like whomp sound, and you're like, oh, here we go. And it's just to explain stuff that, in my opinion, for the most part, we already knew. Like there are just a few, not every single flashback, but there are a few where I'm like, yeah, I get it. I understand. I got it. Like she had to steal. I understand. I get it. I know where she's come from. And there were flashbacks of things we'd already seen, and I just felt it was maybe a little spoon-feedy at times. But aside from that, the trial of Georgia Miller I found to be exhilarating and exciting, and I genuinely thought I couldn't picture a way Georgia was getting out of it, truthfully. I was sat. And I think previously in the other seasons, I've actually been more invested in Ginny's character, but this one was definitely all about Georgia. She is the main focus here, and everyone else is kind of a side character, kind of a piece in her game, in her life, if you will. So overall, if you like Ginny and Georgia even a little bit, season 3 is a great addition. I think it nailed it. Now we are going to go episode by episode and talk about everything that comes up, because I took note of everything I thought was worth talking about. And guys, like the little bar on the side of the notes app is literally like this big. Like we have a lot to talk about. There is a lot going on, which is a great thing for a show. There's so many situations here where I'm like, you could actually slice that a bunch of different ways. And I've seen on the Reddit, people are doing that. So let's just get straight into it. So episode 1, and one thing I've always loved about this show is it picks up right where the last season left off. All right. Like you don't have some massive break in between where you've missed out on all those character arcs closing and they're just like, yeah, that happened off screen. No, this show always picks up right where the other one left off, which I really appreciate. Yes, you have to deal with the awkward aging with Austin, whatever. Let's just get into it. Episode 1. So straight away, Ginny is back at school. You have to sit there in the pocket watching everyone basically be like, yo, did Ginny's mom murder some dude? What the fuck is going on? It's tough. Ginny's already struggled being a minority, dealing with all these people constantly looking at her and being cruel, and now she really has a target on her head, and you feel that. I think the way they portray it is really well done. From there, Meng essentially has the chat the fan base has been having about Georgia Miller's murder of Tom. All right, so they're kind of like laying out all the different perspectives. One of them is like, oh, it's a bit of a mercy killing. The other one's like, it's not her choice to make. So, and that's what I appreciate about this season. They actually get characters to have the thought experiments, say what we're all thinking. Like every single different position is covered, and the show isn't framing Georgia as like a martyr or a hero for this murder. It is meant to be seen as a villainous thing, and I think the tension they play with this season is really fascinating. The other murders I am totally fine with. I'm just going to say that, all right? The murders of her previous abusive ex-husbands or ex-partners, fine, whatever, go for it, all right? Like, I'm not one to judge. You got to do what you got to do. But the Tom one, I'm going to say from the jump, almost felt out of character. It felt very, very strange to me. It almost felt like the show was jumping the shark. But what I appreciate this season does is it actually does explore the flawed thinking in this, the fact that it was a bit out of character. Like even Paul, for example, is like, she didn't even like Cynthia that much. So I need to address it now so you understand my kind of thoughts on this plot and this season as a whole from the jump. So I do not think Georgia killing Tom was a good thing. I actually thought it was a really, really bad thing. Now, just to give some context, I'm in I work in the disability community. I take care of disabled people, and one of the people I care for is a leading disability advocate, and he's talked about the fact that there is oftentimes this belief that if a disabled person goes into the hospital and is on life support, so often people are like, oh, just pull the plug, they didn't have a happy life anyway. And I know that Tom wasn't disabled, but my point is that rhetoric is seen as an invasion of consent and kind of viewing someone's life as less than. And I know that it was outlined to us that Tom was essentially in a vegetative state. He was on the way out. It was prolonging the inevitable. But one, there have been times where people have somehow come back from this sort of stuff. And two, I just think if they wanted us to understand Georgia doing this, they could have done a rewrite, all right? And I think maybe the show is actually forcing us to be challenged. But let's just talk about it. I think if they wanted us to empathize with Georgia fully, what they should have done was had Cynthia be asked by Tom before he went into a vegetative state, if I get to that point, I want you to kill me. And then Cynthia can't do it because she just can't do it, but she wishes she could. In that sense, I kind of get Georgia doing it. If Cynthia went to Georgia and was like, can you do it for me? I can't do it. We already know Georgia has broken that seal and killed people before, so she might find it a bit easier to do, and we have Tom's consent, and Cynthia has asked for it. As it stands, the only defense or even level of reasoning we can understand is the fact that Cynthia was like, hey, I blacklisted Gil for you. Oh my God, it's so hard watching my husband be sick. And then Georgia just went, I'll solve that for you. And as Cynthia says, it wasn't her choice to make. It was an insane thing to do. And I don't think we are meant to be sitting here rooting for Georgia or justifying her the way we would justify her other murders. I think the show is actually trying to have, I'm not going to say have its cake and eat its too, but I think it's trying to push our empathy, push our understanding, and sort of have us questioning whether we should be rooting for Georgia. Because throughout the season, Ginny starts to become more like Georgia, starts to lie and manipulate people, including Cynthia towards the end of the season. And I think the show is positioning it as a bad thing. Georgia sees this as a bad thing. On top of that, like, Ginny's poem in season 2 is brought up again here. And we are meant to kind of reconcile with the fact that Ginny is becoming more like her mother, but we know how strongly she feared that. We know how strongly she was against that. So the reason I say all this is the interesting thing about this season is, for me, the way I was looking at it was like, yes, technically Georgia should be in trouble for this murder. She did a bad thing, but we are rooting for her in kind of a really fucked up way. And I think the reason we're still rooting for her is because we're like, well, what's done is done. She's still a great mother to her children. And if she's taken away from that, they're going to have worse lives. Austin's going to go to Gil. Ginny is going to have to be with Zion, who admittedly has been a bit better lately, at least in season 2, but kind of starts being a bit shitty in season 3. And it's just sort of this thing of like, we've seen how hard Georgia has had to fight to be in her children's lives. But I think this show is trying to actually have us struggle morally. At least that's how I took it. I saw Georgia's actions throughout this season as really confronting and difficult, particularly what she does to Paul. I've seen people be very harsh on Paul this season and describe what they do to Paul, like the writers do to Paul, as character assassination, and people think he's irredeemable now. And I'm like, were we watching the same show? So we'll get to that when we get to that, because basically the way I'm going to do this video is, as things come up in the order of the season, we'll talk about as if you've watched the season. So if you haven't seen the season, it might be a bit confusing, but I will still go through everything that happens. But yes, that's how I feel about the murder. I think if they wanted it to be a justifiable murder, I do like the idea that if like Georgia gets caught for helping someone out, but I just think the way they did that was really fucked up. I don't agree with it. I don't see it as a mercy killing. And I know, like, again, all I needed was for Tom to have said, like, if I'm ever like that, please take me out, Cynthia. Then fine. Like, I can kind of get what they were going for here. But as it stands, no, it was not her choice to make. It was really, really fucked up. And it does borderline feel like she just kind of like had a bit too much to drink and was like, I guess I'll murder. Like, it was really strange and really out of character. And I talked about that in my season 2 video, so I'm not going to beat it to death here. But I also think if they wanted to nail it a bit more, and if they wanted to have this more empathetic lens, which I think would have been more interesting, and I'll explain that in a second, I think what they could have done was had Georgia walk into maybe someone, but like rewrite it completely, walk into someone being abused by their consistently abusive husband, right? Let's say Tom wasn't in a vegetative state. Instead, Cynthia was being abused by Tom. Georgia walks in, kills Tom, feels like she's done Cynthia a favor, because in Georgia's eyes, that's what's always made sense to her. Whereas Cynthia is a product of like Stockholm syndrome. And it's like, you killed my husband. I love my husband. She was beating you. No, I love my husband. What have you done, Georgia? And now she's on trial for seemingly doing the right thing in the wrong way. And it brings up everything from her past. And I think if they want us to have a really empathetic lens for Georgia, that would have been the way to do it. And the reason I bring that up is at a certain point point in this season, they are positioning us to feel bad for Georgia for getting her kids taken away. We're meant to feel bad for Zion and Gil and even Paul to an extent going against Georgia. And we're meant to be, it felt like to me, it wanted us to have empathy for Georgia. And in my opinion, if they did it in the way that she killed an abusive husband of someone else, or even did the one I suggested before where it was actually something Tom wanted, at least we'd be sitting there being like, oh, she's been held accountable for her husband's shitty actions or violent men's actions. Like, in my opinion, it would have been so much more compelling if she had killed someone else's husband in their defense, right? And now she's going to jail, and it shows how men can use and manipulate the system, and a woman seemingly trying to get out of a situation or help another woman get out of a situation. Like, society wants to punish her more than these actual men. I think the show could have nailed some really biting, solid social commentary, right? They want to hold the gorgeous woman accountable and portray her as this violent murderer instead of holding the violent, abusive men accountable. Or you could have had it be like she actually did someone a favor with their consent and is held accountable, and then that brings up her past. But as it stands, I was like, she did do a shitty thing. She did do all this stuff. Like, she's on trial for this shit. And I do feel bad for her because I love Georgia as a character, but it was a strange fucking thing to do. And the whole season I was like, I want to care about you, but I am challenged by this. And I actually think it is good writing. Like, do not take this as a criticism of the show. I think it's solid. I think the show is really walking a tightrope. But if you are meant to be really just like really relentlessly rooting for Georgia and the show wants you to, I think it's clunky writing. But I think the show is a bit more mature than that and wants us challenged a bit. Anyways, moving on. Ginny likes Marcus's haircut. I disagree. I don't like his haircut. I liked his hair way more before. This was weird. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. From there, we explore Abby and Samantha. They share a pack of gum, basically insinuating that they're both dealing with some form of bulimia or eating disorder. As I mentioned before, I really like the way this show kind of subtly handles social issues. There's no like after school special vibe where they're talking to the camera being like, if you see the signs, you need to report it. It feels like a very honest portrayal of how high school works. From there, I will note, I feel like Ginny felt like a completely different person this season. And I know on one end, she's been through a lot. Her mum is literally on trial. She's probably a bit more like low key and going through a lot, and her disposition and demeanor has changed. But I did feel like the fact that it was literally like 3 days ago, I felt like they did change Ginny's character slightly, and it took me a bit to get used to. My fiance was sitting there like, oh my God, I like Ginny a lot more this season. I was like, yeah, I know she's a lot more likable, but it almost feels like a bit of a character shift. But as the season went on, I got a bit used to it, but it definitely felt like a couple years had passed in terms of how she carried herself and her level of like maturity, and not in a way that I felt like was particularly earned. It took me a second to get used to. There, Marcus tells Max not to make George's arrest about herself, essentially like stop talking to everyone about it, stop acting like you're like the school celebrity. And this is interesting because it's setting up the pieces for this arc we explore with Max around the fact that she's like too much for people and they kind of reject her for that. We will get into that more as it comes up, but I do really appreciate it laying the groundwork down so early. From there, we first hear this new version of Austin speak, right? Because he's gone from little child to like seemingly teenage boy. And it was an adjustment for sure. I'm almost wondering if they should have done what they did in It Chapter 2. Now, if you remember, in between the first It movie and the second It movie, the one with the killer clown, all the kids kind of aged substantially. They're in that teenage growth spurt year, and they digitally like did their voice up a bit. And look, like it wasn't perfect, but I'm wondering if that would have helped. From there, Paul spots the bullet hole. I do feel bad for Paul. I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I think Paul's going through the ringer. On one end, you can act like he's naive and he's from a different world and he's from a privileged lifestyle and he couldn't possibly understand. I think finding out that your wife may have killed 2 people and on top of that, a third one very recently is a lot to take in, and you would feel a bit deceived. It is a lot of information to take in, and I do empathize with Paul. We have our first flashback with young Ginny and Austin, and it's a rough one, to be honest. Like, just getting used to this new, younger casting is a bit difficult. From there, we meet this poetry guy named Wolf, and he's a massive cringe lord. It's giving Hunter, all right? And again, I don't think it's a flaw of the show. I think the show does young, cringy people really well. But yeah, Wolf is a massive cringe lord. lord, not even a likable cringe lord. I actually liked Hunter better. I find this guy really off-putting, and that is validated as the season goes on with the way he handles the abortion subplot. I thought it was just totally gross. I also find it interesting that Ginny is naming herself Gia in this poetry class. It's obviously speaking to the fact that she's trying to kind of like keep her identity low key, hoping people don't see her off the news, I assume. But I liked it. Also, I really like this poetry teacher. There is such a substantial difference between the way the English teacher treated Ginny/Gia and the way this poetry teacher treats her. But this poetry teacher is a lovely presence in the show. I thought he was a lovely dude. He saw Ginny's potential and really fostered it. And I don't know, it was just nice to see. I think after the first 2 seasons of how shit that English teacher was, it was a really warm moment. Marcus's dad is like, yo, maybe Cynthia killed him and blamed Georgia. Why didn't he write the show? That would have been a great idea too. I would have loved that subplot, right? Like if Cynthia killed, like that's such a great idea. I would have preferred that over what we got, right? Like maybe Cynthia finds out that Georgia's killed people before she kills her husband and then pins it on Georgia. Yo, like Marcus's dad maybe should have written season 2. That's such a fucking exciting idea. By the way, can I just mention, I absolutely love the portrayal of the way the family communicates with sign language. I just think it's so authentic and well done. And I appreciate that, again, it's not presented like an after-school special. There are long, extended conversations that are in this format, and I just like it. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact that they aren't just their communication, right? Like these characters aren't just portrayed, or Marcus's dad isn't just portrayed as the tokenistic deaf guy. Like he's a four-dimensional character. And I think it's really, I appreciate their sort of like faith in the audience that we can like still feel the emotion and are willing to engage. And it also demands that this show isn't second screen viewing. Like you have to put your phone down and actually concentrate on what's going on. And I think all the emotional beats really land. And I'm glad that like Marcus's family feels really well explored. Marcus's and Max's family feels really well explored. All of a sudden we get this like Thirsty Joe section where he's like cooking in the kitchen. It's shot like The Bear. It's very handheld, and it's like, oh, look at this guy wiping off his sweat and cooking. From there, Paul and Zion have a discussion, right? They have a discussion about this whole murder thing. And at one point, Zion says to Paul, she does the strong things other people can't do, basically implying like, yo, I think Georgia did this shit, and almost seen it as a good thing, which I found a bit strange from Zion, especially given the fact that he starts demonizing Georgia later. And Zion's characterization this season was genuinely perplexing. The biggest beef I have with Zion is when he finds out that they were car camping or whatever, essentially homeless for a bit, and he's like surprised by this. Later on in the season, Zion like loses his shit. And he's like, I never knew that you were homeless, that the kids were living out of the car. I'm like, what did you think was going on? She ran away from you guys very young. You knew she had like an abusive stepfather who you were there when she shot in the hand. Like, is this that crazy that for a brief period a very young mum had to live out of her car? And it's also like Ginny's now at a really nice school, they're in a nice house. Like, why is this the thing you're freaking out about, bro? Zion was weird. He was fucking strange this season. But yeah, Paul then says in response to Zion about the whole strong things people do, Paul says she didn't even like Cynthia, which I thought was like a funny moment of like, why would she do this? And I was with Paul. Like in season 2, I was like, what the fuck is she doing? From there, they have more discussions that basically feel like the way the fan base was sort of talking about it. Next, we have this beauty montage in jail where Georgia is essentially like using her resources. She gets like a little toilet paper roll and like all this other stuff to do her makeup, which I appreciate. It shows how resourceful she is. I didn't see this as like, oh my God, she's so vain or she still cares about looks. I thought this was a really good demonstration of what a survivor she is, how smart and calculated and genuinely like resourceful she is. And then she goes into court in her wedding dress, go off. From there, she does kind of bank on pretty privilege to get released on bail. Like she is clearly trying to be the all-American woman next door, Stepford wife, trad wife kind of vibe. And the judge kind of takes the bait. Now, from there, we find out that Austin and Ginny both know. There's a flashback from like a day or two ago where we find out that Austin told Ginny that he saw Georgia murdering Tom. And from there, Ginny instantly kind of turns into Georgia. Like Ginny's like, you can't tell anyone, you're taking this to the grave, absolutely under no circumstance tell someone. It feels very Georgia coded. From there, we get Georgia in the bath with her ankle bracelet. Now Georgia has a chat with Ginny, and we see Georgia's perspective on this. She defends herself and says he was dying, he was suffering, and I'm like, I don't fucking agree with this, but okay, Georgia. From there, Ginny then tells Georgia like, hey, Austin saw the murder. Then finally, Georgia goes, I'm a bad mum. And it's interesting. Prior to the murder, I would have been like, no, Georgia, what are you talking about? You're a great mum. You do everything for your kids. But at this point, Georgia is like weaponizing this as a way to like bring pity in a sort of a narcissistic manner and win this fight with Ginny, where Ginny's rightfully calling Georgia out for murdering Tom. And Ginny just goes, oh, I guess I'm an awful mother. It's like, okay, at this point, like it's not looking good. It's not looking good at this point. Episode 2 opens. We have Georgia talking to Austin about the murder, and she emphasizes this thought pattern of like, he was really sick. Her defense feels really strange to me. Like, I get on one end if it was like that Dexter arc where like someone wanted to be put out of their misery, and because Dexter is already used to killing, it's just like he can do that. But it's like, that is not what we saw. Like, I find this plot so strange. And again, if it's intentional that we are unsettled and we kind of shouldn't be rooting for Georgia, but we love her so much, so it's a test of our empathy, sure. But yeah, it does feel really strange to me. From there, Austin goes back to his first grade classroom. I think it's first grade. And it's giving Hello Fellow Children vibe. It's giving like fucking like 21 Jump Street vibe. It feels strange. From there, we have this chat with Ellen, Marcus and Max's mum, where she essentially says that she sees the vision. She gets why George would have done it, but it's none of her business, which, I mean, sure, she's allowed to have that perspective, I guess, but it definitely feels strange. From there, Nick suggests to Paul to leave Georgia, suggests that she isn't innocent. So in the prior season, Nick, who is like Paul's assistant, was told by the private investigator everything that Georgia is suspected of doing. Nick is essentially like, yo, I think you should leave. Like, she might actually kill you. From there, we get this like subplot where Georgia is essentially acting like Rear Window. She's watching all the neighbors. She's getting in their business because she's bored. I really like this section. Then we have our first really great scene of the season for me, like where I was really like in it. And that's when Cynthia shows up to Georgia's house and starts like screaming at her. It's like, why would you do that? It wasn't your choice to make. Georgia says, well, if someone did it, it would have been like a bit of a favor. And then she said a favor would have been a swim class or something. It's a funny moment, but also I appreciate that the show is actually tackling it with the weight that it should hold. So from there, Georgia tells a bullshit story to the lawyer about this guy rolling onto a pillow, and it feels like bullshit. I think it's very transparent here that the lawyer also suspects this is bullshit, but he's engaging with it. He's indulging it. And his job is essentially to find any other motive that they can pin this on, or any other story they can find, whether it be Cynthia wanted to kill him and maybe it was her or someone else. I do like this arc though. The lawyer likes the idea of pinning it on Cynthia, and Georgia doesn't like this, which I appreciate. It shows Georgia's weird, strange, but also kind of earnest moral compass, where she's like, oh, I did that. That was my thing. Like, we're not having it pinned on Cynthia. Like, I want to get out of this, but not that bad. Ginny tells Braysher that she self-harms. This was a good moment. I think in this scene, I really felt why Ginny told Braysher. I think Braysher is a lot more low-key than like a lot of Mang. And I think especially what's explored with Max, I think this show does a really good job of having us empathize with Max and understand why she's on the outside and really feel bad for her, but also understand why she could be an overwhelming friend, especially given how she was treating people in season 2. And I think this portrayal of Braysher, like, I totally get why Ginny opened up to Braysher about this. It felt really earned, felt well done. I do really like Braysher as a character. I think they explored her more in season 2. I wish we had more of her. As it stands, the characterization feels a little thin, but I think in season 4 they're going to explore her even more. We then get this great line from Marcus where he says, my parents made me an art studio so I don't kill myself. I think Marcus always does a really good job of being very misanthropic, but not being off-putting. Like, he makes a lot of like edgy jokes that somehow don't come off cringe and instead feel a bit earnest given his circumstances. From there, Ginny and Marcus have this really cute scene where they're throwing paint at each other. I really like Ginny and Marcus. I really like them together. I think Marcus is ultimately a good dude who's going through a lot, and like he might not be going through more than Ginny is, but it's not really about that. It's how you kind of process it, and his brain clearly isn't wired to handle things, and he's not doing well. But I think the exploration of both of their struggles and their relationship together is just really good. It's really, really good. From there, Zion's parents come for dinner again. I cannot stand Zion's mum. She's so judgy and so mean. And like, look, at this point, I kind of get it. I kind of get judging Georgia, all right, given the murder accusations. But she's not even judging Georgia about that. Like, she already didn't like Georgia, and she's judging Georgia because Georgia didn't give them custody. Like, that's what it's about. Like, the murder is secondary. You know what I mean? So they pick a fight. They call out Georgia for not giving her custody. Like, it's always about that. From there, Ginny runs away from Georgia, and Georgia can't follow her because of the ankle bracelet. This is where I was like, oh, we're cooking this season. This is good. So they're having a fight. Ginny runs out of the border, and Georgia just has to sit there and let her go, because if she walks any further, the cops will come get her. It's a sad, beautiful moment. And again, somehow they get this empathy from us, even though Georgia, we should be like, what the fuck, Georgia? But we feel bad for her. It's a great moment. And I love, like, it's an unsubtle visual metaphor, right? Like, I'm leaving you. I'm escaping your clutches. You can't follow me anymore. You can't control me anymore. Like, emotionally speaking, it's very obvious, but I think it's a good example of visual storytelling. Really, really well done. Hi guys, just brief intermission to talk about Patreon and YouTube memberships for this channel. So pick your poison. You can either get a Patreon membership or a YouTube membership. You get access to a fortnightly podcast where I talk about everything I've watched, read, consumed in a given 2-week period, shows, movies, books, whatever. You get my thoughts on it every 2 weeks. Links are in the description below, and back to the video. Thank you. From there, episode 3. Zion's mum is now hanging around and she's grocery shopping, which feels nice, but you can feel the passive-aggressive nature of all the favors she's doing. They then have this convo about gaslighting. This was a very funny, consistently, like, great humor this season, but essentially Georgia doesn't have any idea of what gaslighting is. She also thinks it's a good thing. She thinks it's gassing you up. She gets them confused. It's hilarious. Georgia now seems to be the difficult one, and Ginny is very well grounded. So as I mentioned before, it did feel like Ginny suddenly snapped into being like a mature adult. And again, that might be because she's seen her mum get taken away to jail. So she's preparing to be the adult of the house. That is the defense I can give. She does feel like a bit of a different character, but I think this fight here, it does actually feel like Ginny is now the more adult one. And I know Georgia has always been a bit of an immature mum at times. She'll also slam doors. She'll get on their level. But ultimately, I feel like Georgia was a pretty good mum at heart. But I think this conversation is really interesting because it does actually feel like Ginny is the more kind of emotionally sound and stable one here, where we used to see Ginny really fly off the handle. It was an interesting moment. There's this really good moment where Zion's family and the new girlfriend are all at dinner, I think it is, and Zion's mum keeps going like, "Oh, Zion's girlfriend graduated from Harvard Law. Did you hear that?" And like Ginny calls it out, and it's a really good, honest portrayal of like dicey interpersonal family dynamics. There's also this interesting moment where the lawyer is talking about the fact that Georgia might be able to get away with this because she's, quote, white and pretty, and it zooms in on Ginny's face, and Ginny gives this knowing, like, you can tell there's some sadness there because Ginny has always had to deal with experiencing microaggressions that Georgia hasn't, and there's been that disconnect there. And at this point, this Zion's girlfriend, Simone, is really comfortably calling this for what it is. And Ginny like seems happy about that because obviously it'll help her mum. But there's also this validation of this insecurity she's always had. It's a really well-written, subtle moment in my opinion. From there, we get Preston being a piece of shit. So Preston and Abby are having like a sexual encounter, and Preston starts doing the whole like just the tip essentially. He's like, just put it in your mouth for a second. Come on. Don't be a tease. Oh my God. I think this was like a really well done portrayal of like kind of shitty coercive control tactics, like in the sense of like they didn't make him like a cartoonishly over the top villain out of nowhere, but this felt very realistic and very grounded and just like, oh, okay, this is uncomfortably close to home. From there, we have this hilarious moment where essentially Georgia gets Paul to run across the street and make sure this guy is wearing a shirt in order to get head. Essentially, it's a good moment. It's a funny moment. He gets back. George is naked. They have a romp. Awesome. Like good, funny stuff. And thankfully, a moment of levity in this show. Then there's this moment where Abby tells Preston that she's been making herself throw up. And then Preston just goes, is that some weird girl thing? And just kind of goes like, and she's like, is that all you have to say? And he goes like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be doing that. In a weird way, I almost get why she likes him. Like on one end, it might be that simple. Like, this is going to sound fucking awful, but it's like some people appreciate just someone being like, don't do that. that's not good for you. And I almost, in this moment, if he wasn't so shitty in the scene prior, I'd almost kind of get their dynamic. Like maybe she just appreciates that curt coldness. But I think in this moment, given what we'd just seen and given how she's trying to be vulnerable and clearly like kind of humanize their dynamic again, I think she did want more and she did want a more earnest discussion. I think Preston's not built for that. He is a bit of a shitty dude. Then there's this moment where Ginny and Georgia are talking about whether you can be friends with an ex or not. And Georgia's saying to Ginny, you can't be friends with an ex. And then Ginny kind of goes like, oh, like you and dad cough, or whatever. And I think it's a good moment of Ginny being snarky and sarcastic and not in like an unlikable bratty way. I think it does show some growth with Ginny. She's starting to learn how to communicate a bit more effectively. Like I was just like, I can't picture Ginny from season 1 doing this. But again, I never thought Ginny was that unlikable. I feel like people are very, very harsh on Ginny. I think she was just a teenager dealing with a lot. But yeah, I do think it's interesting to note that I think her delivery is a lot better in this season. From there, we have this moment that sets up this big arc with Max in this season. So Ginny and Abby happen to hang out just with each other without Max by accident, essentially. So they both happen to be shopping at the same store with family members, and then they snap a photo together and send it to the group chat. Max is hurt, feels like she was intentionally not included. I think it's a good moment of misunderstandings and miscommunication because they didn't actually meet up without her. They just happened to bump into each other. But Max takes it as such. And then what's interesting throughout this season is that is actually validated. What starts here as something innocent or something that Max shouldn't have read into does become something that Max should be worried about, which I think was just an example of really good writing. I also mentioned before, I really appreciate the portrayal of Marcus's dad, but I think there's this great scene where Ginny goes over for dinner. Sorry, they don't subtitle when it's stuff that Ginny will be able to understand, and then they do subtitle other times. I think it's a really well done scene. When they're using sign language that Ginny can't understand or they're not explaining what they're saying to one another, we don't get subtitles. We are left out similar to Ginny. And then when Ginny is included, whether it be through sign language she does know or they're just like kind of verbalizing it, we do understand what's going on. I think it's a really just well done, nice, tasteful scene. We then have this really subtle scene, and again, it's another example of this show handling kind of social issues well, in my opinion, where Samantha goes to the bathroom, assumingly to make herself throw up after eating pizza, and then we sit with Abby kind of just picking away at the pizza and not eating it either. It's just well written. It's good stuff. I think this show is really maturing as it goes on. Then we have a really, really great moment where Abby goes to show Samantha the tape on her legs, right? This has been set up since season 1. And by the way, I just love how this show sets up things and then like really slowly unravels them, because it hasn't been 3 years for these characters. It's been 3 seasons for us, but it's only been like a year at most, maybe not even. And so this whole taping thing is still a relatively new arc we're exploring. And so Abby goes to show Sam, and Sam takes this as a come on, right? And then they kiss, or Sam kisses Abby. And this leads to 2 things. One, it leads to Samantha and Preston both using each other seemingly to make Abby jealous. So Samantha and Preston start hooking up because they both like Abby, and they're trying to make Abby jealous of one another without knowing that the other, like, wait, no, Samantha knows that Preston, but I don't know if Preston knows Samantha likes Abby. Anyways, so they both use each other. It's good writing, but what I really like is this kiss from Samantha. Even though Abby isn't attracted to Samantha, it does awaken something in Abby regarding her sexuality. And I think it's good writing. It's really fucking good writing. Next, I absolutely love the scene on the way to the dance with all the friends in the car. It just feels very authentic. It feels real. It doesn't feel like one of those scenes where like no one talks like this. It feels very, very real. From there, we have this scene where Abby gets drunk with Nora, or Nora essentially transports Abby home because she had too much to drink, and she reveals to Nora that it's probably because she didn't eat all day, and Nora kind of takes note of this. But then her mum comes in and is instantly fucking awful to her. Such a good portrayal of like awful narcissistic mothering. And also I appreciate that this show then explores the mother and her like redeeming one another in their relationship. But like initially I was like, oh, this mom is horrible. Like horrible entrance, and really is cruel to Abby. It's a really well written scene, a tough watch for sure. From there we start exploring the idea that Paul is really mad at Georgia because Nick has told Paul everything that she is suspected of, all the things that line up. And like I've seen people really mad at Paul and feel like he's abandoning Georgia, and therefore whatever she does is totally fair enough. And I have to disagree. We've seen Paul be absolutely wonderful, in my opinion, for the first 2 seasons. absolutely wonderful, really patient, really wanting to care for Austin and for Ginny, and like offering his resources. He's paying for this lawyer, and yes, okay, he comes from a rich, privileged background, but I think he is a fundamentally sweet guy. And yeah, okay, he's not built for this world, but sorry, it's not like he's just dealing with someone who's come from an abusive past. He's dealing with someone that is being accused of murdering someone who wasn't abusive. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. And she said she told him everything, and she clearly did not tell him everything. All right, so I get why he needs some space. Hot take. But if I was with someone for less than a year and I found out that they killed 3 men, I might have my guards up a little. I might need some time to process things. And this idea that this is a massive betrayal, I think, is really young, naive, and immature thinking, in my opinion, but we'll get into Paul later. So from there, episode 4 opens. We have a monologue about how I think Georgia is not a bad person. From there, Paul's being distanced. Georgia then says to the lawyer, why are we getting an autopsy? He was dying anyway, which is like a diabolical thing to say, but we obviously get why she's saying it. From there, I absolutely love the scene of Ginny and Georgia watching the TV. I think at this point, they're watching the TV with Paul doing like a press conference. Really like the scene. I really love this season watching Ginny and Georgia start to get along and unite. It's interesting that they unite over something objectively bad that Georgia has done, but it's an interesting moment and I do appreciate it. From there, Georgia has her like I, Tonya moment in front of the mirror where she's trying to hold back tears, trying to keep up appearances, looking in the mirror and like keep her composure. It's well done. It's a good performance. I think the actress playing Georgia and the actress playing Ginny especially have always been genuinely wonderful, and this season is like no exception. From there, we have this arc. Marcus has vandalized the English classroom when he got drunk, and the English teacher instantly accuses Ginny, and this is such a clear reflection of his guilt. The only possible defense we can apply here is because Ginny had like kind of blackmailed him with the letter. He was like, oh, I wouldn't put it past her to do that. But I think really what's happening here is the English teacher knows he was shitty and he thinks his chickens came home to roost. But on top of that, he's probably just been a bit racist. He hasn't liked Ginny from the start. He's always wanted to validate this complex he had about her, and he was so keen to do so. And I'm glad that it backfires and blows up in his face. Ginny and Marcus then have this D&M about why they can't be together, and he says that he doesn't love her, which we know is a lie. He does clearly love her, but essentially he can't love her is what he's trying to say. We then find out Marcus doesn't remember the classroom or kissing Georgia. He's essentially all over the place. This isn't just his depression. He is a full-blown alcoholic this season. They've been building this up for a while, but he is a young alcoholic. This is a serious subplot that they explore, a really sad subplot, but he is full-blown. Like, he can't remember things. He's vandalizing things. He's self-destructing, essentially. And often these things are tied. Like, depression and substance abuse are always very heavily linked. And I think this show explores it, again, really, really well, like with flying colors. Next, we have this scene where Austin trashes the classroom, essentially because everything's too much. And he's trying to get out of class because he can't handle it. He feels very embarrassed. Gil then arrives to clean up the mess. Frowny face. We do not like Gil. Gil's a fucking asshole. Really well done asshole. Very good performance from the guy that plays him. But yeah, like we don't like Gil. Gil's bad. Now, this scene obviously would have worked better if Austin still looked 5. As it stands, it comes off a little more threatening because he's like a teenager running around a bunch of like toddlers, but that's okay. Like, that's all right. From there, we have this scene where Georgia does this like party. I forget what it's called. There was a type of party. It's called block burner, something like that. But she essentially has this party out on the street where a bunch of other people do it as well. She goes around and essentially uses this as an opportunity to kind of help with her jury selection. And there's this one point where someone compares what she did to Tom as similar to putting down a dog. Or sorry, they don't make the comparison, but the show is kind of making that parallel. Ginny hears that they think sometimes it's good to put down dogs and put them out of their misery. And she goes, oh, that would be a good jury member for us. I'll go with that one, which shows how demented Georgia's line of thinking here is in regards to seeing what she did, in regards to how she saw what she did to Tom. But, you know, that's a conversation for another day. Joe then confesses his feelings to Georgia, and this conversation ends with him basically saying that he needs space from her. This is like the 3rd time this season where someone has talked about the fact that they need space from Georgia. Paul needs space. Joe needs space. Ginny literally ran out of her border. like this is a constant thread. And I thought it was positioning us to realize, like, I thought it was positioning us to go, okay, Georgia has realized that she hurts everyone she's around. Everyone needs space from her. So she's going to kind of like willingly go to jail, essentially, give everyone the space they think that they need from her. From there, Ginny then helps with the jury selection with her lawyer because of what she learned at that party. It's a good humorous section. I really do like it. From there, I like Marcus and Max a lot this season. I like their dynamic. I think it's beautiful. I think the way Max supports Marcus is really lovely. I think the flashbacks we get with young Max and Marcus, one, the casting's excellent, the performance is excellent, but I think it also these are necessary flashbacks in my opinion. The flashbacks with Marcus and Max are genuinely refreshing and actually gives more context, whereas I feel like some of the ones with Georgia feels like we're just going over covered ground in my opinion. From there, we have a moment where Paul pumps and dumps Georgia. Now, on one end, I think Georgia was also trying to lure Paul back in this moment. They are both playing games with each other. It's very Gone Girl coded. And I've seen people really tear Paul apart, tear into shreds on the Reddit here. On one end, I think we've all experienced post-nut clarity. I think we've all had that moment where we get a bit, you know, like, oh, let's go for it. And then afterwards you're like, whoops. Two, I just think given what Georgia does later in this season, I don't think this is the biggest sin ever. And three, it's not a nice thing to do. Like, I'll fully acknowledge it's not a nice thing to do, but I think given the position they're both in, I think they're just desperate and running on emotions. And I think they're both using each other at times. And again, it's not good. It's not great. It's not the nicest thing to do. I just don't think this is like the character assassination moment people seem to take it as. From there, the trial of Georgia Miller starts right at the midpoint of the season. I was so excited for the trial of Georgia. On top of that, it's on TV, so the whole town knows all her shit. It's a huge moment. And we've been watching this character be very secretive, very resourceful throughout the entire show. And now we're really kicking off. Gabrielle is then called to the stand, that private investigator, and the episode ends, the mid-season starts with Gabriel basically being like, yo, Georgia Miller is a serial killer, which is like a huge moment. Episode 5 opens up, Ginny's talking about in her monologue the fact that she was the only one who's ever really seen her mum and her willingness to do bad things, and now that other people can see it, she doesn't like it. She wants the cat back in the bag. Super interesting moment, really do like it. Gabriel starts bringing up all the ex-husbands who have died / were killed by Georgia. They go through her exes, her history of gang violence, criminal activity. As I mentioned before, Ginny says, I wanted people to see what I saw in my mum. Be careful what you wish for. It's a good moment. It's exciting. I'm like, here we go. The season really gets moving here. From there, Georgia starts bullshitting at home to the lawyer and the whole family. Like, she's like, I didn't do this. Where are they getting these accusations from? It's a tough moment because you're rooting for Georgia, but like, you're like, you did do all this shit. And they're defendable, but it's like, it's hard watching her lie, particularly to Paul, who has asked for the truth multiple times. And yes, like, again, going back to that whole pumping and dumping thing that Paul pulled earlier, it's like, okay, he did do that, but I get him needing space because he's scared. And also he still was paying for the lawyer at this point. Like, he didn't literally like have sex with her and then cut off everything. Like, I'm just saying, all right? Like, we're allowed to have moments of sexual weakness. From there, Gil tells Zion that Austin shot him, which, like, hearing that, you're like, holy shit, right? Like, it's a huge moment. Zion's obviously like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it's a huge reveal. From there, we have this really sweet moment between Ginny and Georgia where they're listening to Wolf's heavy metal music and just being like, what the fuck is this? It's a lovely moment. I think this season has the most beautiful, earnest moments between Ginny and Georgia, which I actually think is really lovely given how much Ginny has been at Georgia's throat for the first 2 seasons. I think Georgia was a bit more reactionary in that dynamic, but I think it's really, it's lovely that we really had to wait to see Ginny and Georgia actually get along. It feels really well earned, really stretched out drama. It doesn't just feel like the writers like, oh, they're happy again, no, they're sad again, no, they're happy again. Like, we really had to wait to see Ginny and Georgia get along, and it's beautiful that's in this moment where both of their lives are kind of falling apart. From there, Zion confronts Georgia about the murders, and he brings up, the shooting of the stepfather's hand. And he's like, if I wasn't there, you would have done more. Ugh. And like, I don't really fuck with Zion here. On one end, it's like, bro, the stepfather was like sexually assaulting Georgia. All right. So on one end, I just kind of am like, it's not ideal, but like, why are you okay with her going over and wanting to shoot the stepfather at least somewhat, and then being okay with her shooting the hand, and then getting all high and mighty and being like, and if I wasn't there, more would have happened. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm surprised you're okay with any form of shooting someone. Like, do you know what I mean? I just found Zion a bit inconsistent here, right? Now, on one end, I would get it if Zion was okay with her shooting the stepfather, but not okay with her killing Tom. But as it stands, Zion is very inconsistent with his morals here. Like, he was fine letting Georgia run around as a very young mother, but surprised they are temporarily homeless and sees this as a massive betrayal. Similarly, he's like, oh yeah, like I was fine with you shooting the hand, but I know if I wasn't there, more might have happened. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, you get what I mean? I'm just kind of like, right, but again, it's good writing because Zion is technically correct. He's saying that like there is some anger here, and it makes me think that you could possibly kill people. And the thing is, Georgia did actually kill people. So even though I think Zion is being a bit shitty here, he's technically right. And that's what I think is the beauty of some of the writing this season, is there are moments where what people really think of Georgia comes out and is exposed, and then you have to kind of be like, oh, but she did do a bad thing. You know what I mean? Similarly with like when people are like, we need to take these kids away from Georgia, she's a bad mother. They've probably thought that before the murder, but now the murder kind of justifies that, you know? It's, again, good writing. From there, Ginny kisses Wolf and Marcus sees. Just a devastating moment if you're a Marcus fan, having to watch Ginny kiss Wolf, this fucking cuck. Wolf does this like weird nice guy bop on Ginny's head. Ginny tells Zion that Kenny was molesting her. And this is a big moment. Zion, again, is like, this is just huge game-breaking information to him. He's very uncomfortable. He's like, what the fuck is going on? What is going on with my kids? And it's like, this kind of frustrates me because he was clearly very much an absent father for ages. Like in season 1, I could not stand Zion. And I also could not stand how the characters were so chill about him because he was literally gone for ages and left Georgia to fend it. Now, admittedly, Georgia did run off too, but then he just started going taking photos for ages and barely kept in touch with any of the kids, and then just shows up and judges Georgia for every single decision she made. And again, this is kind of like that. It's like on one end, like, yes, this is horrific news to learn, but it also seems like Zion is like, oh my God, I can't believe your mother let this happen to you. And it's like, believe us, she did not let that happen. The moment she realized that was happening, she took very drastic measures to make sure that would not happen anymore. And what I appreciate is Ginny actually calls this out. She says, Mum needs me. You can't just show up now and keep me away from her. Good stuff. Georgia is labeled a female serial killer on TV. Like she's portrayed as like this, you know, like true crime next big thing. It's great. I love it. And I love that the whole town kind of gets in on this. It's really interesting to watch this. We then cut to the stepfather seeing this on TV. This is a consistent thread that pops up multiple times where you are meant to have this sense of tension, this sense of like foreboding dread that this stepfather is going to re-enter her life. And this is paid off towards the end of the season where he actually drives by her home. And she gets a warning from her actual father as well, being like, be careful, like they might come back into your life. Good writing. Very scary, like actually scary stuff. From there, we cut back to the trial. I love the lawyer roasting the PI for gaining a relationship with Nick, and essentially and this leads to everything the PI uncovered being completely thrown out. A good win for the lawyer, a good win for Georgia. Sucks for the PI because he was kind of right about everything. But on top of that, what I like is that essentially the lawyer's like, okay, this was thrown out. It's meant to be inadmissible, but at the same time, you can't put that back in the bag. Like everyone is going to suspect you a bit. It is a point of cultural conversation. People will be thinking about it. Interesting writing. I really like the exploration here. Now, was I the only one getting really heavy Chicago vibes here? Because in Chicago, there is a crime. Like the whole plot of Chicago is that Renee Zellweger's character kills someone intentionally. They're very angry because they've essentially been pumped and dumped, and Renee Zellweger kills this guy. And then the whole thing is like this fantastic lawyer spinning the media to essentially believe that it was like self-defense and like it was justified and they had to do it. And this is giving me Chicago vibes because Georgia did do the thing. She did the thing. She did the crime, but we're watching the court system slowly get manipulated and then like weasel her out of something that, and you can't help but root for her, even though it's like she did the bad thing. She did do it. It's again, really good writing. From there, Ginny is not very happy that Paul wasn't at court. I agree. This is not the best from Paul. And I think that's where I kind of understand like sleeping with her and then not doing this is pretty bad. I don't need him to live in the same house or still have questions and be up in the air. You know, we all get a bit in the moment, but I think not showing up isn't the greatest thing in the world, all right? He's allowed to be scared of her in private, but I think, yeah, not showing up is a bit rough. But again, I don't know, man. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to deal with. Like, let's keep it in perspective with what's actually come out here. All right. All right, so I might have actually got the order wrong here. This is the moment where Paul actually leaves. So maybe he was just a bit distant up until this. I might have noted incorrectly. But Paul leaves here. We have this moment where Georgia turns away from Paul and doesn't let him see her cry. It's a beautiful moment. Austin is really sad. Ginny sees this as a massive betrayal. I do think they're lacking some understanding, but I get why it hurts. Like, I obviously get why it hurts. It's a sad moment, but one I do understand from Paul's end. From there, Ginny is showing up to school. She's getting paparazzi'd. I love the sense of scale this season. It feels like every single thing we've seen up until this point is being paid off. It's huge. This isn't just like annoying. Like, I remember I got really annoyed in You season 5 and some other moments in You where, like, or even Dexter did this a lot, where you thought the world was ending for this character and then they kind of like double backed. But no, in this one, it's a huge moment. Ginny's getting paparazzi'd. Like, it's all over the TV. Like, you cannot, as the lawyer says, put this back in the bottle. And then from there, we get more good writing where it's actually essential that you've watched the other seasons and like paid attention. The slam poem that Ginny did against her mother last season is now going viral because it has all this subliminal messaging and pot shots about George's violent tendencies. It's such good writing. And from there, we have the emotional, like, just the best scene of the season, in my opinion. Now, we all know that in season 2, you had that incredible moment where Georgia runs in initially aggressive and learns that Ginny is burning herself, and it's this beautiful moment of like, what have I done to my daughter? Is an incredible moment, and this season might actually top it because I was tearing up this moment, and it's essentially a repeat. It's a redo. Like, Ginny is about to burn herself again, and the mum doesn't want her to do that, but they take it a step further. Georgia starts pleading through the door, being like, don't do it, baby girl, don't do it. Starts being like, oh, what did you say in that poem again? The poem's really good. Essentially, Georgia really puts herself first and goes, I don't mind that this sabotages my character. I don't mind that the public is reading into this. I don't mind that it's getting me in trouble. Like, it was an incredible poem, baby. Like, repeat it. Like, tell me how good it was. Quotes the poem and she cries and she says how good it was to Ginny. It's such a beautiful, well-written moment that just so perfectly shows the good in Georgia. All right, like, Georgia's like insane. Like, she'll do insanely unhinged stuff, but you know where it's coming from. And this is such just a beautiful, well-done, well-written moment where you're watching her jump on the knife for her daughter and being like, no, like, there is stuff more important than me. And you get the vibe that, like, Georgia will gladly go to jail if it means saving Ginny. You know, it's beautiful. It is beautiful. Beautiful. I cannot emphasize that enough. From there, now the child, like, after that beautiful moment, now the child protection have showed up because, you know, Gil has ratted on her in a team effort with Zion. So Gil's standing there smiling while Georgia's crying on the front lawn. And on one end, do I think maybe I understand them getting taken away given what she's on trial for, what she's like, yes, but also it's like, she's good to her kids. She wouldn't hurt her kids. It's a sad moment. It's a sad, sad moment. There is a sense of betrayal from Zion there as well. I don't know what the fuck Zion's doing this season. And Georgia's getting photographed in her darkest moment on the lawn. Good. Episode 5, everything was happening. It was just a great episode. From there, episode 6, Georgia gets a murderer brick thrown through her window. From there, Wolf starts screaming. We have this moment where Ginny and Wolf are making out in the car and he starts screaming heavy metal. It's just like fumbling the bag. Like, bro, please stop. It's so embarrassing. It's very clear to everyone, right, that she's very heavily rebounding. Like, she does not like this guy. I always got the vibe that Ginny didn't like Hunter either that much, and it was just kind of like nice to have a boyfriend. I do think her heart lies with Marcus. And I think here in this moment, she is just rebounding because this guy is goofy. He's fumbling a baddie, in my opinion. From there, we have this really great flashback where we find out that Zion actually bought a ring to propose to Georgia, but Georgia very quickly sniffs out that this isn't really genuine. He hasn't really bought it up, and essentially the conversation becomes, well, I want to get married to you because she deserves both parents being together. It's just like a shame thing, which Georgia obviously doesn't like. From there, he finds out that they flunked a math test that Zion helped her study for, and this is a moment where I get Zion being annoyed. Totally understandable. Totally get it. Fair enough. A good moment where we actually understand Zion's perspective a bit. I really like the scene where Ginny and Georgia are both reading the murderous article and they're both having different takeaways, reading the comments, and, it sits with them a bit. From there, Ginny actually blocks Georgia's calls to make sure that her case isn't sabotage and she doesn't further extend the child protection and get in trouble. Good moment. Ginny gets really standoffish at Zion. Reminds me of early seasons with Ginny where her demeanor is actually dependent on how she feels about the person. So the way she was to Zion here feels exactly like she was in season 1, how she was towards Georgia. So it shows that maybe it isn't actually this massive character shift. Instead, she's just in a better mood with Georgia. So this is how she acts when she's on good terms with someone. And now that she's angry at Zion, she's very much in the pocket that she was in season 1 and a bit of season 2. Ginny then says that the time to care about George's parenting quality was ages ago and not now while she's on trial, which I think is very valid from Ginny. Again, if Georgia hadn't killed someone, but regardless, I still think it lands. I think Zion is very selective when he chooses to be a good father and also very selective and strategic on when he chooses to be an absent one. He kind of got to skip all the really difficult years. There's also this great moment where there's a TV armchair psychologist, right? Just some random true crime person is trying to psychoanalyze Georgia, and it seems like the psychoanalysis is actually pretty on the money, and I liked that. It was an interesting moment where initially it felt like it was positioning us to be like, oh, look at this fucking idiot. But no, Georgia, you can tell it affects her. They're talking about narcissistic personality disorder and having this tough exterior and stuff that really checks out for Georgia, and you can tell Georgia's a bit confronted by it. And then Georgia chooses to go and speak to Ginny's therapist because it hits home so much. Preston then asks to go upstairs with Abby. Abby says no, so then he makes out with Sam. Very cruel. Max then lies to Zion about Ginny's whereabouts, which I think is Max being a really good friend. And I think something that Ginny overlooks later in the season, but I think Max here was a pretty good friend. From there, Wolf and Ginny hook up in the bathroom, and it's bizarre. Now, on one end, this is a means to an end, so we can have the abortion subplot, the pregnancy subplot with Ginny, which is a great moment, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But the sex scene felt really strange to me. On one end, I know she's rebounding. I know she's keen to. This is a show where Ginny has... and Marcus, admittedly, it's not all on Ginny, but they've made mistakes in the past. And I guess just the way this was structured and framed and set up, it was meant to feel really clunky and spontaneous, but not in sort of an exciting way. It just felt very... in a good way, very strange is basically what I'm saying. Looking back on it, given where it goes and what it leads to, I think it's a really interesting moment. I think you are meant to be seen there feeling this sense of foreboding, feeling like it's a little rushed or a little out of nowhere or a little careless, truthfully. Cynthia then takes the stand. Very interesting, exciting moment. She says that she didn't suspect foul play. She says that he didn't deserve his fate if it was foul play. From there, the lawyer then tries to find motive within Cynthia. Cynthia then mentions Georgia saying if someone did it, would be a kindness, a favor, which is a pretty damning moment. Paul is then rejected for custody. I think this is an important moment because I don't think Paul is doing this as a control tactic. I don't think he's doing this to be nasty. I think he's sitting there being like, okay, Georgia might be going away for a while. I really care about these kids. I don't want these kids going to abusive Gil or absent father deadbeat Zion. So I care about these kids. And I think Paul cares about these kids. I think all these people turning on Paul because he's struggling with Georgia are missing the forest for the trees. I think here it does show Paul has good intentions. He's doing his best. He did marry Georgia, and I don't think it was to control her. And I don't think he's trying to take custody of the children to control her or the kids either. I think it's just an earnest effort to give these kids a future. And maybe it's not the future they want. Maybe it's not the future the fan base agrees with. Maybe it's not the future Georgia wants, but he's doing his best. And I think he's operating in good faith at this point. Ginny then has this argument, this explosion with Zion where she says that she hates him. Again, very similar to early seasons where she wasn't very happy with Georgia, but instead directed at Zion. From there's this great moment, great comic relief moment where on the TV they're talking about at one point when this was brought up, Georgia coughed, and then Georgia just goes, I had to cough. It's so funny because so many true crime podcasts are like that. Someone will go like this, while talking, and they'll be like, you see, that's actually a giveaway that they actually buried their wife under the house. And it's like, no, maybe he did just have an itchy lip, like God forbid, you know, or what if he has a tick? Georgia then calls the therapist. Georgia calls Ginny's therapist and admits to wanting to hurt herself, and it feels incredibly honest compared to Georgia's usual demeanor. This is a moment where all the front Georgia puts on, all the beauty she puts her effort into, all the external beauty that she like tries to uphold, all the like stoicism, this like constantly calculated demeanor just drops. It's such an honest, vulnerable, earnest moment for Georgia. Some of the most honesty we've seen from Georgia the entire show. From there, Nora, now they've been setting this up for a while. I'm really curious what you guys make of it, whether it's commentary on endometriosis or it's just trying to talk about periods in general. But Nora has been consistently talking about her period. People have been talking about the fact that Nora talks about her period this whole show. It's been a constant thing they've brought up. And I'm wondering if it's hinting at something, whether it be infertility complications or something like that. I might be missing the mark here, but I do feel like it's hinting at something. I'm just not quite sure what yet, whether it is endometriosis or something else, or just the fact that like typically medical staff aren't very good at diagnosing and validating these concerns properly. So women are often left to figure it out for themselves. Let me know in the comments below. But regardless, Nora is late to her period yet again. So they all agreed to have a pregnancy roulette. And now, if you are a fan of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, you know pregnancy roulette can have massive results. So I was sitting there being like, oh my God, please have it be that Ginny is pregnant. Please. Like, this is so fitting. And earlier in the season, I was watching this moment where Ginny was like dancing with Wolf and then had sex with Wolf. And I was like, this is reminding me of flashbacks with Georgia, kind of this like, I don't want to say reckless, but sort of, you know, this free spirit that then results in having a couple of kids before they're ready and like constantly moving around and like, you know, having things come up as a result of decisions that feel fun. And in the moment, I was like, oh, surely this is going to be a parallel. Like as Georgia's being sent away, Ginny is entering her own young mother arc. And sure enough, Ginny is pregnant. Great little stinger for the next episode. I was like hooked. I was like, here we go. So Georgia and Paul then have a conversation and it's getting pretty heated. He then says to her, do you have any idea how much this is destroying my career? She says, only if I'm guilty, which I think is such a dismissive, strange thing to say. It's not accurate at all. Like both of their reputations are cooked at this point. Like obviously Paul's political career is cooked at this point. This is going to be held against him time and time again. It's insane. And I really felt like Georgia was being completely dismissive here. The only if I'm guilty was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The poetry teacher then says that Ginny is a great poet and writer again. I took note of this just because it's so nice compared to the shitty English teacher from before. Georgia then tells Wolf that she's pregnant, to which Wolf then goes, that's wild. Anyway, shit, sorry, I have to go. And obviously he's like, holy shit, am I about to be a father? But he actually could not have handled this any worse than he did. This is literally as bad as he possibly could have handled it. Georgia then tells Joe that Gil hit her. I'm pretty sure it was Georgia that told Gil. And this results in Joe punching Gil on the street later. It's a good, well done, well executed punch, and we'll come back to that later. From there, there's this great moment where Ginny is crying to Zion and says, I don't want to be here, I want to be with Mum. This is obviously because she's pregnant, and who would be better to handle that than someone who's been through it? George has been through it. Like, this is not something that Zion could handle. We've seen this. I think it's just good writing, good drama. I'm worried for Ginny, you know? From there, Ginny breaks into Georgia's house, tells Georgia that she's pregnant. Georgia is shattered, but I think they really handle this scene well, all right? And this is a moment where obviously the show is trying to communicate to the audience a bit. And I think the show does a good job of having Georgia here, someone who is, I'm not going to say pro-life, but Georgia has chosen not to abort twice, but also doesn't pressure Ginny to make this choice. Also is worried for Ginny and didn't want Ginny having to be a young mother like she was and wanting Ginny to have a promising future. And I think they walk a really delicate tightrope of simultaneously validating how hard it is to be a mother before you essentially wanting to, how hard it is to be a young mother, essentially exploring the importance of safe sex and birth control while also not shaming people that choose to keep a baby, and also being very careful not to shame people that get an abortion. I think it walks a really delicate tightrope of validating both perspectives and validating both choices essentially, right? Like it's not trying to be a pro-life scene at all, but what it is trying to do is essentially say that either choice you make is okay, and there are positives and negatives to both. And I think it does a good job. Like when Georgia's like, I mean, I'm so glad I have you, but it was not easy. Like, are you prepared for that? And Ginny says no, and it's a beautiful kind of sliding doors moment where Ginny chooses to go on a different path to her mother. And there's no sense of judgment. It's just well done. There is this cold initial anger. It's similar to the scene where Georgia found out that Ginny was self-harming. There's this initial frustration and anger. Didn't I get you birth control? Why weren't you more careful? Didn't you see me make these same mistakes? But again, it's kind of anger at herself. She sees herself in Ginny at this moment. She sees it as a reflection of her own parenting, as her failures of a parent. It's just well done. The quote from Georgia being, I don't regret having you guys, but you're different. You have so much going for you. A baby is a sacrifice. Essentially saying that Ginny has so much more than she had at that age. Georgia had more reason to be excited to have a kid and had less to sabotage essentially, whereas Ginny is in a different position. It's a really beautiful, honest moment. From there, Georgia also says they probably should get an abortion because she can't say that Wolf impregnated my 16-year-old daughter, I'll detonate. It's a funny line. Georgia then begs Ginny not to go alone. Again, another beautiful moment. Georgia can't go with her. Marcus ends up going, which is lovely. I really like this arc. I think the way they handled the abortion, everything about it was just beautiful. Well done, honest, earnest, nailed it. Nailed it. We then get a scene that gave the biggest laugh of the season, which is when they're watching this trailer for a television movie about the mayoress murderer or whatever, about Georgia Miller. And then they make the daughter white. And they basically say like, they made me a killer. And then Ginny yells out, they made me white. It's a good moment. From there, we have Joe and Georgia almost hook up. Joe gets home. He's all wet. He takes off his shirt. I'm pretty sure he's like, oh, I'm dripping all over your floor. I better take these clothes off. And Ginny's like, oh my God. Oh. They don't hook up though. It's not the right time. It's not the right place. It's not right yet. But you know, you can tell they both want to, but they choose not to. From there, Georgia then sees the pregnancy test in the bin, has a big brain moment and goes, I'm going to lie to Paul about being pregnant so then he stays with me. Which is like literally so sinister and insane, but we'll get to that as we talk about this season. All right, episode 8 opens up. Wolf deadass goes to Ginny. Yo, whatever you decide about this baby, I'll be there. And it's like, you're too late, buddy. You are too late. From there, the poetry teacher submits Ginny's poem. This is such a nice payoff because that previous English teacher would not submit the slam poem, but this teacher is like, fuck yeah, I'm going to be your #1 supporter, Ginny. Beautiful moment. Gil makes Austin stop wearing Harry Potter glasses. This is sad. This is really, really sad. Sad, sad, sad. He's worn those Harry Potter glasses since the first episode. On top of that, he then reveals that he knows about the blacklisting that happened with his apartment. Cynthia then pinches an iPad and grabs the Harry Potter glasses from the bin. This is a beautiful moment that shows how much Cynthia is struggling, but also how much she does. There is some humanity there. She doesn't just hate Georgia, and she does care about Austin a lot. It's a nice moment. Paul finally shows up to court after Nick called him off. Good moment. Georgia starts being epic trad wife again, and Paul is kind of hooked, right? She starts making the lunches. He loves the little lunches. He's excited about the baby. It seemingly is all working. I felt bad for Paul here. He's essentially being lied to. And I know on one end you can make the argument he should have cared about his wife regardless. But whatever, right? He was worried, he was nervous, he was having second thoughts. I think a baby would further incentivize you to make things work. And Georgia is also very much positioning him to do so, right? So I understood Paul's little arc here. And it was interesting that Nick was kind of calling him out, being like, are you just back with her because of these nice lunches? And he's like, well, it's not hurting. From there, Nora then invites Ginny to babysit at Cynthia's house with Austin now on one end. Crazy work that both the siblings are in the house where their mum murdered a guy. Like, just crazy. But regardless, it's nice that Nora did that. Now Ginny and Nora are hanging out without Max. Again, another circumstantial thing where they're both hanging out. But I think the point that's meant to be made here is that a few circumstantial ones happen where they hang out without Max, and then they actually kind of realize that they like it better without Max. And this is hard, and we'll get into it when we finally have the big reveal with Max. But I have complicated feelings about this, not because I think it's poorly written. I actually think it's really well written, but in terms of who I understand and empathize with. Now from here, Ginny is shown with Braysha's friendship group again. again. Now, this was a scene in season 2. They had this, or season 1. There was one point where they did it. I remember I felt like the point that the show was communicating was that she felt a little out of place there. She didn't know how. On one end, Bracia's friendship group feel a lot more mature than Mang. But I remember in the first time we saw Ginny hanging out with this group, it felt like she was a little out of place. I thought it was trying to communicate that like she doesn't exactly feel like she belongs in either group. And I think here in this scene, it still feels like that. But am I the only one getting that? Am I like misreading this? Or does Ginny actually feel a little out of place, a little more quiet, a little more neutered, and a little more like scared to talk? That's at least the vibe I get. Right. There's this great writing moment where they show up to see Georgia. Austin and Ginny show up to see Georgia with a social worker around being reviewed for how their dynamic is. And Austin is wearing like 4 layers, and they make Austin take off the jumper, clearly because they think Austin is being abused. But instead, what the big reveal is that he's actually wearing a hockey jersey because he's getting along with his dad. It's a beautiful moment because they're both worried that he's getting abused. And in some sense, it's like mental abuse, right? Like he's getting tricked by his dad to being his dad's biggest fan. It's a really beautiful, well done writing moment. Really well done. From there, Paul then asked to be a team with Georgia. This is a sad moment. He then mentions wanting to name the kid after his granddad. It's a rough moment, all right? You're sitting there like, oh my God, what are we doing? From there, Zion freaks out about the car camping. I mentioned this earlier. I just thought this was such a bro chill moment. Like, it's not like she wanted to do that. It's not like she was offered how, I know the whole parent thing, but like, yeah, okay, she was homeless for a bit, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like they're fine now. I mean, aside from the murder thing, but it's like they've been fine. You weren't around. Like, who cares? I don't know, man. It just seems really judgy. Like if I was with someone and I found out briefly they had to be homeless, my first response wouldn't be like, I didn't fucking know that. Like, I don't know, man. Zion was weird. And then Zion, this is the thing that makes him go, I should have fought for your custody a long time ago. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is the thing that got you. This is the thing that got you. From there, Paul gets suspicious and he asks Georgia to take a pregnancy test. And straight away, Georgia just gives up the game. Like, you know, you can see it in her face that she knows she's fucked. Paul instantly, like, obviously Paul being like, yo, can you do that is enough, right? Like, he knows, she knows that he knows that she knows. It's a rough moment. She starts crying before she can even consider it. Then Paul reveals, like, I never asked if you were guilty. I still didn't leave. You know, you always have this idea that it's you two against the world, but I was willing to be your world. Paul's breakdown here is heartbreaking. First off, he was acting his ass off. He was doing an incredible job. And I'm not someone who, like, when people yell, I'm like, oh, automatically it's good acting. I appreciated his voice cracks, his high-pitched voice. It wasn't this, like, awesome, masculine, I told her who's boss vibe. It's an uncomfortable, hard to watch moment where this guy's whole world is crashing down, and like rightfully so. This is a sad moment. And like, yeah, he didn't actually leave. Like, he needed space, rightfully so, but he was still funding the lawyer. He was still doing his best with what he could do. He's been gaslit and lied to and manipulated. He is being manipulated, all right? It's a form of fucking abuse. Let's not get this twisted. And this leads to a moment where Paul's arguing and eventually he slams the wall next to Georgia. And I've seen this discussed on Reddit with absolutely no charity at all. And I'm surprised by this, all right? On one end, I know optically how it looks, right? I know that a very physically imposing guy doing anything physical around a woman is never a good look. It is an instant red flag. I am just wondering, like, given the circumstance, I'm surprised people are so keen, seemingly online and on Reddit, to be like, yep, first it's this, then it's going to be a fist through a wall, then it's going to be full-blown abuse. He's shown who he really is. Guys, I have to say, I kind of disagree. And like, I know, like, some people wouldn't even slam a wall. Some people wouldn't even shout. But there's been this, like, kind of contention of, like, oh, like, if you shout, it instantly means you're going to throw something. If you throw something, you're instantly going to do this. If you do this, you're eventually going to, like, punch someone. Guys, he was lied to multiple times. All right, he's finding out that his wife may have killed 3 people, and now she's lied intentionally to manipulate him while he's paying her lawyer fees. She's lied about having his baby. and he lost his cool for a bit. I'm not saying it's okay, and I'm not in any other circumstance I'd be like, yeah, this is a massive red flag. But he is in an abusive relationship and he's exhibiting behaviors of reactive abuse, in my opinion. I don't think this is consistent with Paul's character. I don't think if he was with someone who wasn't lying to him all the time, he would have done this. And I'm not like, if he whacked her, I wouldn't be seen here being like, that was okay. How she's treated him was okay. I guess my point here is like, yes, him slamming the wall was a moment of physical intimidation. He slipped up. He knows this. He stands back and he's like, like, we can acknowledge that that wasn't good, but I'm surprised that people are really keen to be like, yep, he's shown himself for who he really is. He's just another abusive monster. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, under what, like, we've all seen shows where a woman is like horrifically cheated on and then slams a glass or like throws something at the guy as like, get the fuck out. And I think if our takeaway in that scene was like, what an abusive monster that woman is, it'd feel a little strange. And again, I don't think in a typical fight, slamming walls is ever okay. And it clearly did scare Georgia. But I'm just sort of left here wondering if it actually does check out that like, oh yeah, Paul is clearly also an abusive piece of shit. I never liked Paul. I don't really agree with that character assessment. I'm going to be completely honest. I think we are watching someone who is being mentally drained, his resources, like, of course you would feel used. And I think his character assessment of Georgia, where he's like, you were using me, based off what he knows and what he's feeling, isn't exactly wrong and isn't exactly out of pocket. And again, ideally you would have better emotional control, but I just think people are a little unrealistic sometimes. And again, I don't think slamming walls is okay, but we have literally like I don't even think slamming doors in a fight is okay, but we've literally seen Ginny and Georgia do that multiple times. We are watching a show where Georgia put a pillow over someone's head, right? And we're still rooting for Georgia, and then everyone's just so keen to be like, yeah, Paul's a monster. We literally like rooted for Joe punching Gil, and Gil was a piece of shit. And I'm just saying, if whatever, you know what I mean? Now, what Gil did was more physically intimidating than what Georgia did, 100%. And I'm okay with Joe punching Gil. I'm just saying, like, both can be true, right? Like, he probably shouldn't have slammed the wall next to Georgia, but I also don't think Paul is a piece of shit. And I personally just don't think this holds much weight. I don't think this holds much water. And I think people are being harsh on Paul. I think if we gender swapped it and this was Georgia throwing something at him or smashing a plate, we'd probably be like, not ideal, but like, and truthfully, as much as I went, wow, that'd be really scary if I was Georgia, I'm not going to pretend I don't understand that this guy is probably at his like wit's end breaking point and literally having his whole world crumble in front of him. And I think later on, Georgia then says to him like, you're going to blame me. Like, I got this out of you, but like all that stuff you showed me, that side of you, like, I think Paul says to her, like, this isn't me. The way I've been, how angry I am, like, this isn't me. Georgia then says to him, like, this side of you was always in you. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. That's always been part of you. That is who you are. Disagree. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I think that's really unfair. And if anything, isn't that like a tactic that like abusive people use? They'll build you up until a point where you start shouting or swearing or throwing stuff after doing that stuff themselves and then shaming you for it and being like, see, you're just as bad as me. Like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Like, based off what I know about Paul, I think if he was with someone that wasn't lying about being pregnant and seemingly wasn't using him and didn't murder 3 people, I can't picture him behaving that way. Genuinely. Now, we will see. Like, there is a chance I'll eat my words. In season 4, if Paul gets worse, like, I'll gladly walk all of this back. But as it stands, like, I don't think the wall thing was good at all. Not ideal. But I think we need to acknowledge that what Georgia was doing is also abusive. It's manipulative, narcissistic, mind games. It's mental fucking abuse. Let's not get it twisted. And I think this idea that like if he gets worked up, he's instantly in the doghouse is insane. Anyways, moving on. From there, Paul publicly announces the divorce. Paul stops paying the lawyer. Now, Georgia and Joe can hook up. So Georgia and Joe hook up because he punched Gil. From there, Georgia then goes to steal a motorbike. All right, she goes to steal Marcus's motorbike. Max catches her. Georgia then essentially hands herself in, unless I'm misunderstanding. I'm not sure if she got caught or she hands herself in. It initially felt like she got caught, but then she says to someone she handed herself in. Regardless, now she's in jail. She's calling from jail. Now, episode 9 kind of shifts gears a bit. This episode opens with a narration from Max. We get this insane, great, detailed, all these flashbacks about how neurotic she is, essentially leaning into this idea that she probably has ADHD. She's incredibly neurotic. I think the narration is really well done. It's just very much in the headspace of Max. This is all building to a big moment of empathy it's trying to have with Max. And I think they've done a really good job of showing why she is a bit of an off-putting friend. She can be too much, but then this shifts perspectives and makes us see how much she cares about people, why she feels on the outer, why she feels the need to do this. We have all these flashbacks where she's constantly demanding attention from her parents who aren't giving it to her because they're focused on her brother. All really good stuff. Now, Simone comes to help Georgia. Simone offers to be Georgia's lawyer. From there, Austin doesn't like Georgia, clearly influenced by Gil. Gil tries to manipulate Ginny and it does not work at all. From there, Gil actually assaults Ginny. He grabs her arm and bruises her. This is a massive moment, a huge moment, and will pay off later. But this was a tough watch and shows how scary Gil is. Also, I'm just going to say, I do not like, I think her name is Silva. This is Max's kind of girlfriend, on again, off again. I think she's the worst. I think she's self-involved, judgy, rude, annoying. Don't like her at all. All her contributions were annoying this season. I liked her in previous seasons, but in this season, she was super unlikable. Did not like her at all. Didn't seem concerned about Max, just concerned about herself in relation to Max. From there, Nora tells Ginny that Joe slept with Cynthia. Now, Ginny kind of puts this away for later and is like, ooh, this could help get my mum out of trouble. And this is where we start to see the show shifting us to see that Ginny is kind of turning into her mum a bit. From there, there's this moment where Abby accidentally lets slip that they all egged someone's house without Max. And this kind of kicks off this whole Max feeling left out thing. Max realizing she's on the outer of the group. Max confronts Marcus about his drinking and essentially begs him to stop doing it, like tries to get him to stop doing it. And he promises that he will. Georgia is then talking to Simone about like how people need to know her story, need to know her backstory, how hard she had it. And I'm like, Georgia, babe, like all of that backstory, I know all of that backstory. It's not going to help inform your most recent murder that you're on trial for. You know what I mean? Like it might make people care about you, but like the fucking murder you did does not relate to it all. And as I mentioned before, this is a moment where I'm like, I wish the murder she did was in line with the abuse. If it was like a husband abusing another wife and she killed the husband, I wish it was that, because it would have worked as such a good payoff for this idea that women are persecuted for men's shitty behavior. But again, no, they did not do that. From there, we have this really great moment where Max sits down behind Nora and Abby and doesn't know that Abby was with Tris, doesn't know that Abby was exploring her sexuality. And I think it's a really interesting moment because I 100%, when Abby didn't tell Max, I knew why. I was like, yeah, I want to tell Max because Max is going to make it all about her. Be like, oh my God, why aren't we dating? Blah, 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 blah. And like, I know we like Max this season, but let's not pretend we don't get why Max gives people the ick. Max was really full on in season 1 and 2. She was also really mean to Abby and Ginny. And she has had a tendency throughout the first 3 seasons to make things about herself. Both things can be true, right? So even though we have empathy for Max here, I got Abby not telling her. And what's interesting is, yes, Abby was a little curt in this scene, but I actually thought Nora was exacerbating a bit. It's weird. Like, it felt to me that Abby and Max were having a conversation about difficult things, about difficult emotions, being like, hey, I kind of didn't want to tell you because you might make it about yourself. Max is obviously then a bit on the defense, but I didn't think they were having an argument. I thought they could have had a healthy discussion. And Nora, who has been shown time and time again to be very conflict averse, very like almost to a fault, very like, oh, I'm going to stay out of it. Oh, that's really problematic. Blah, 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 blah. Nora starts being like, guys, stop fighting. Guys, this is really tense. And it really bugged me. Like, I know people like this and it drives me nuts when they're so like, I don't want to hear it. Please stop. It almost adds a sense of tension. And then you're both like, you're pissing her off. You better stop. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but Nora was kind of bugging me. I think it was a really well done argument because we got Max's perspective, why she feels left out. We've got all the things leading up to this moment, but I also get why Abby didn't want to tell her. But Abby admittedly was a little curt, but not to a point where I feel like she was bad. However, Later in this episode, I think it's this episode, Max is at a party and she's trying to talk to Ginny and ask questions about Max's alcoholism and kind of be like, hey, we need to have a serious chat about this, even though we're not friends. And Ginny is cruel. Ginny is cruel. Now, on one end, to validate Ginny's perspective, do you guys have any friendships that you know are kind of expired? You know they're on the way out. You know you need to end it. And sometimes ending friendships, like, you know how people are like, always be honest, or you can be honest with me, just tell me what I did. Sometimes you can't. Like, you can't really say to someone sometimes, like, I fundamentally do not like a bunch of things about you that I've learned in the time we've been friends, so I no longer wish to be friends with you. Because people will be like, I need to change, or this really hurts, or that's unfair. Sometimes you just don't like people anymore. And so I don't think Ginny is wrong if she doesn't want to be friends with Max anymore. That's actually okay. She's outgrown her a bit. She doesn't like that energy. They're all going through very heavy stuff, and Max is a lot sometimes. And that's okay. She'll find her people. So on one end, I do think friendships are really hard to end because they don't end like relationships. There's a great Seinfeld episode where Jerry doesn't want to be friends with someone anymore and tries to treat it like an actual breakup, like end the friendship. And it doesn't go well. It's not easy. On the other hand, though, Ginny could have handled it so much better, just shown some compassion. You know, like, I appreciate Ginny being like, sometimes people grow apart, but the way she said it was so like insidious and like not caring. I've seen a lot of people online talk about it's giving them numb flashbacks. I'm like, I 100% get it. Like, if you've been in that position of Max, it's brutal. From there, Max is now performing this musical. She sees Marcus drinking. She sees the friends watching her, not really engaging. Ginny leaves during the musical number. Everything feels like an attack to Max, and I get why she feels this way, but she notices Marcus drinking what looks like Gatorade, but is obviously alcohol. She tastes it. She rats on him to the parents. Marcus is not happy about it at all. From there, Marcus has this raging alcoholic moment. He like blows up at his family, at his parents. It's hard to watch. It's awful. I felt so bad for Marcus and his family. It's just a tough situation to watch. From there, Austin takes the stand. And he gets up and he goes, Tom was murdered. I saw who did it. I saw how they did it. I saw everything. And you're like, oh my God, he's ratting on his mum. Gil's got to him. And then he goes, Tom was murdered. My dad did it. Huge moment. Huge. From there, we're into the finale. So Gil is like, what the fuck? Gil leaves. And then we get a flashback to literally like a day or something, right? Like a while ago. And we essentially see that Ginny shows that her arm has been squeezed by Gil, essentially gets Austin to commit to this lie and get Georgia out of it any means necessary. Great moment. And it's a tough moment because you are now watching Ginny go full Georgia mode. And as an audience, you're rooting for this. You're rooting for Ginny. You're rooting for Georgia. And you have to sit there in the back of your head being like, Georgia did technically do the wrong thing, but Gil's also a piece of shit. And I think Georgia will be safe with the kids and Gil will not be. So let's just go. It's well done in the sense that it gets us to empathize and understand, even though you are sitting there like, what the fuck is going on morally with me and with this show and with these characters. Austin then suggests that the motive is the fact that Gil was blacklisted. So that's why Gil would have done it as punishment towards Cynthia. From there, Cynthia actually like helps validate this story. And then we find out that it's because Ginny blackmailed Cynthia and said that like, hey, there were like cameras in the place where you and Joe hooked up. And like, I don't think you would want people to know that because they might think you murdered your husband. So she essentially blackmails Cynthia. Again, full Georgia mode. This is a dark, sad moment. And again, that's why I think the show isn't necessarily portraying Paul as this awful dude, rather someone cracking under the weight of this essentially fucked up family unit a bit, all right? Like, they are getting a bit dark now. Ginny's downfall here is meant to be seen as such. You're not meant to be rooting for her to take this dark turn. This is meant to be a sad moment where, despite Georgia's best efforts, Ginny is becoming like Georgia. And Georgia addresses this. Georgia's like, you can't do this anymore. I know I do it. You can't do this. This is a sad, dark moment, but also a very satisfying one. This is a payoff that has been earned. You've watched Ginny try to be nothing like her mum, and now she's fully leaning into it. It's simultaneously dark, but also triumphant because you're watching Georgia get out of it, a character you care about and really want to succeed for some reason. Zion is incredibly suspicious of the whole thing, rightfully so, but also just feels like he just doesn't want to see Georgia win a bit. Joe then finds out that Georgia and Paul hooked up around the time that they were kind of talking about getting together, so he's a bit hurt. hurt. Ginny and Georgia then play Remember When and go through all the insane shit over the past 3 seasons. Good stuff. Love the montage editing. Love this joke. It was really good. It was good. Ginny then says that she will always love Marcus in a very beautiful moment. From there, Paul gets angry and takes it out on Nick, which seems to be a bit unfair. It's the only time I haven't really understood Paul and where he's coming from. I thought this actually, I know it's bad. Technically, slamming the wall is worse. Like, it is fundamentally worse, but at least I understood how Paul got to this point. Whether I'm saying it's right or not, I'm not, but I'm saying I understood the emotional trajectory. Paul starts being awful to Nick towards the end of the season, like absolutely awful, and a really gross moment for Paul. This to me felt like more of a character assassination. I was like, ugh, Paul, what are you doing? Georgia then starts playing games with Paul. She hires someone to drill outside of his office, which feels a bit mean and petty, but whatever. Also, it may be suggesting that Georgia's going to run for mayor, which just feels insane to me. I hope they don't do that. It would feel like jumping the shark. I actually feel like the show has done a decent job of staying somewhat grounded despite this crazy stuff. This would feel insane to me. Ginny then performs her poem and she absolutely aces it. There's this moment where I think the school principal talks to the racist teacher and is like, we have to talk about why she drops your class. This is insane to me. Good moment. Georgia then talks to Ginny about who she's becoming, essentially says, you don't want to be morally corrupt like me. Don't do it. Again, a beautiful moment that kind of does sum up the idea that the show knows that Georgia has become a bit twisted in this back end, and it's not a victory. It's not a girl boss slay queen moment. This is a sad moment that Ginny is taking this moral downfall and being corrupted. Georgia tells Joe that she killed Tom, and like he is a bit thrown off by this, but not as much as I would expect personally. Like, he was surprisingly chill about it. I think he really does just love Georgia, but I think people online seem to see this as like, that's why Joe is the best. That's why Joe is so good for Georgia. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, like technically yes, but also, like, ideally, you're not down for murder. Sorry. Georgia then says she can't get into anything with Joe right now. She needs stability with her family, and she hasn't given that to her 2 kids. And maybe this was a warning that she needs to give stability to them. From there, I did get a bit out of order, but we have that whole thing where Max and Marcus are at the party. She talks to Ginny, and then Ginny rejects her, and then Max takes Marcus home. Ginny seems concerned about Marcus, and Max goes, nope, you didn't want to talk, whatever. Get home. Marcus blows up the family, has this awful I hate me monologue, and Marcus is then taken to therapy. He's taken to rehab, and it's a good essential moment. Georgia then visits Paul, says that she was wrong, gives him the ring back. Paul and her then kind of have a bit of a blow up. Paul says that she never loved him. And then that comes the line where Georgia says like, oh, you know, anything that you've shown was always inside you. Like, that wasn't my fault. And again, like, I don't know. I question that a bit. Personally, I do question that a bit. From there, Georgia's father calls Georgia and says, you need to be careful. I think it's interesting. Georgia's father seems actually concerned there. I'm wondering if Georgia's father was maybe potentially framed or set up by the mother or the stepfather or something, because it feels like he really does care about her and has been trying to warn her about the stepfather and the mother. So that'll be interesting if that's paid off in any way. Finally, the season ends with Georgia's mum and stepdad driving by the house in a very ominous way, like something's coming. But then furthermore, Gil is still out there. That's concerning. Like, Gil has had this whole thing thrown against him, and from my understanding, he's still out there. So I'm scared he's going to show up and like abuse someone, or like, you know, there's that thing where like men will like kind of burn down the house and take the whole family out with them. Like, I am actually worried that Gil's still out there and going to do something. But on top of that, Georgia's pregnant. Now, people are hoping it's Joe's baby. I disagree. I hope it is actually Paul's baby. I think that's one, really interesting melodrama. 2, interesting because she faked a pregnancy and now she is actually pregnant, and it'll be interesting to see whether he believes it. 4, it keeps Paul in the picture. Maybe they can reconcile. And if they don't reconcile, it's even juicier. If it's Joe's, I mean, like, she needed a break. She wanted a break from Joe. I guess it is this whole like star-crossed lovers thing. Protection seems like a foreign concept to seemingly all the characters in this town. I'm not just blaming the women, like the men too. Like, none of them seem like, do I want a kid right now? Maybe I'll wear a condom. Like, no, none of them. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, while I've got you, please consider getting a membership to this channel, either through YouTube memberships or Patreon. The links are down below. Every 2 weeks, I do a podcast talk about everything I've watched in a given week or month. And for top tier members, you get to pick a video for the main channel or vote for a video for the main channel. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have a lovely day.